Hey everyone, we're back. So today we're going to start assembling the Chevy 350 TBI engine. If you remember in our last video, we had one long video of a disassembly of the same Chevy 350 TBI engine. Albeit the same, it's not the engine you've seen. This engine was coming back from the machine shop when we were disassembling the other one. However, they are the same engine. It doesn't matter if it's a TBI, this can go for any real 350. So we're going to break this into several segments. And one of those segments is going to be kind of like a pre-build segment. Take a look and see what we have. And on the whiteboard here, I put a few things down. I put down parts. Do you have all the required parts you need to get this together? Tools. What are you going to use for tools? Sealants. And I should have put down assembly lube as well. Cleaning supplies. What are you going to use to clean your engine? Stuff like that is it's a good question because so many people have a different opinion. So the miscellaneous is usually just for small containers or rags or gloves, stuff like that. Sorry, gloves. So let's take a look real quick and we'll kind of go through some of this. One of the reasons I put down parts is it's easy to forget something. I just picked up that block heater, for instance. I actually forgot about it. My last engine I brought here, I was in a panic to get together. When I went to put the heads on, I had no head dowel pins. When they had surfaced the deck of the block, they had forgot to give those back to me. So I had to put that off till the following Monday. So that's some of the things that can happen to somebody. So you always want to pay attention to your parts. Your tools, you know, we're going to have torque wrenches. Actually, I don't have one laid out here. Right here we have a micrometer. So I use to check the crankshaft width. And for my inside clearances, I have an inside mic. Most people use a dial bore gauge. I just use an inside mic. It's what I've been doing forever. It works for me. You can use plastic gauge if you like, and if you're not going to do anything at all, maybe that's not a bad way to go. But remember, with plastic gauge, everything needs to be dry. So if you're using plastic gauge, make sure it's dry. Okay, there's lots of videos on YouTube about that. So when we think about tools, we need a few more basic things. I have a degree wheel out in the background there, but before we get to that, there's a piston ring installer to put on our piston rings onto the pistons. Okay. Before we put those on, we should be checking those with our fuel gauge. We want to make sure that we have the proper piston ring end gap. Rod bolt boots. Never a bad idea to use rod bolt boots. I myself have hit a crankshaft with the end of a rod bolt once and spent a long time getting that cleaned up. Rod bolt boots, always a good thing to use. Other than that, you got general hand tools. We have a crankshaft socket there. This socket's nice because this piece comes off. You can stick your degree wheel in there and tighten it back up. So I like that one. It's a good piece. So those are our general tools. Like I say, general hand tools. We have a bearing race and seal installer. I use that for seals. Harmonic balancer installer. Stuff like that. If you don't have some of this, can you borrow some? Do you have friends that have some of these items? Those are some of the things you can ask before you get going. As far as sealants, the best way to put this, thread sealer. Use thread sealer whenever you're going into a water jacket, okay? Especially with your head bolts. If you're concerned about your intake and oil coming back up into your intake bolts that go into the lifter valley, you can use silicone or thread sealer there. I use silicone. And that brings me to silicone. A lot of people say you shouldn't have to use silicone when you're building a new engine. Well, that's fine. I use Ultrabach. And one of the reasons I use silicone is most of the stuff we deal with now is imperfect. So some of the engines I deal with are 30, 40, 50 years old. Not everything's perfect anymore. So silicone is kind of that saving grace for making up for pitted or slightly warped pieces that you want to work back together. You're not sure. So I use silicone still. Plus it holds gaskets in place for you. Another thing you can do to hold a gasket in place or for something you're concerned about is high LMR. We won't be using that in this engine, but it was just a thought. One thing I will be using for the cam and lifters for lube is the Joe Gibbs assembly lube. I've never used it before. I was told by somebody that this is really the way to go. Somebody whose opinion I respect. He says he really likes it and he's moved to that now from what he was using. So I'm going to give that a shot. For the bearings, you have your usual Cleveite bearing lube, engine assembly lube, but it's a bearing guard. I really like Torco. I've been using Torco forever, and I will continue to use Torco on the short block and on the bearings and stuff. So that's kind of my go-to for bearings and rocker gear. In the oil can, we have just straight 30 weight oil. And of course we have Loctite over there. So that's kind of what I use. And the most common stuff you'll see. So everybody has their preference. Nobody's right or wrong. If anybody has a better idea, please throw it in the comments below. We can all learn. I mean, at the end of the day, the internet's supposed to be about information sharing and helping each other out. So absolutely, if you have something to add to this, please leave it in the comments. Cleaning and miscellaneous. So this is kind of a big one. Cleaning. So I was on the internet the other night and I see people are cleaning cylinder walls with WD-40 and toilet paper or automatic transmission fluid and toilet paper, which is how I started actually. I used automatic transmission fluid. So years and years and years ago, I got a tip from an engine builder saying, you know, you should really try to get your stuff a little bit cleaner. Just what I've noticed by looking at your stuff here. And I use lacquer thinner. And I said, lacquer thinner? So I tried lacquer thinner and, well, I loved it. It cleaned everything. And it dried everything. It was awesome. Problem with lacquer thinner is you only really want to use it in a well-ventilated area. And man, I wouldn't use your hands. I would use gloves, something like this. I even one up that and maybe get some dish gloves. This stuff is tough on a person. I love it, but it's the doors are open and I have gloves on when I use it. But that's just me. I just want to try and take care of myself, so I'm not going to recommend that. I'm just going to tell you that's what I use. Some people say they use brake clean. I'm not sure. I never have to do a short block of an engine. But just for kicks, this I sprayed a bunch of transmission fluid on it and went into a cylinder and just did a couple roundy swipes. Then I put a lacquer thinner on this rag, and that came out of that same cylinder, and that came off the deck around the cylinder. So that just shows how much, I don't know, contaminants or debris are still in these when they come back from the machine shop. Remember, they go through a full machining process. They go back through a spray wash cabinet usually after that's done. And then they get bagged up and sent to us. So there's a lot of stuff left over inside of there. And it's really our responsibility when we're assembling these engines to make sure we get them as clean as they can be. When we're cleaning the crankshaft, we're going to use those brushes right there, as well as paint thinner, or lacquer thinner. It'll be in that can. And you'll be surprised what you see come out of those crankshaft journal holes. After that, we'll wipe it down and we'll continue on. And the same with the block. We're going to do the block, the cylinders, all with lacquer thinner before we assemble it. And we'll see how it comes out. Other than that, just have a bunch of rags at your disposal. Don't pile yourself up too much where you feel like you're overwhelmed. If you want to soak your lifters in some oil, I find these disposable food bowls a really cheap alternative, just to throw some break-in oil in there and throw your lifters in there. Don't pump them up, just throw them in there and let them soak, but we'll touch on that when we're assembling the engine. But I hope this helps some people, just give them an idea of things that you can use or things that people are doing. And like I say, if you have a different outlook on this or you have something you want to share, please leave it in the comments. Thank you.